Imagine losing 25 years of your life. 25 birthdays. 25 summers. 25 winters. Gone. Imagine watching the world move forward without you. Children growing older. Loved ones passing away. Dreams slipping further and further out of reach. All while you sit inside a prison cell for something you did not do. This is the story of Anthony Wright. A man who was wrongfully convicted of rape and murder in Philadelphia. A man who entered prison in 1991 and did not walk free again until 2016. A man who spent nearly half his life behind bars for a crime he was innocent of. Philadelphia. Early 1990s. The city was tense. The crime rate was high. The newspapers spoke daily of violence. People were scared. And in 1991, a case shook the city to its core. On October 19th, the body of 77-year-old Louise Talley was discovered in her North Philadelphia home. She had been raped. She had been murdered. The community was horrified. It was a brutal crime, a senseless act of violence, and the people demanded answers. The police promised swift justice. They promised to find the person responsible. And soon, they announced they had a suspect. His name was Anthony Wright. Anthony was young, just 20 years old, known to friends by his nickname, Bolo. He loved boxing. He loved music. He was a son, a father, a man with his whole future ahead of him. But all of that meant nothing once suspicion fell on him. Detectives claimed Anthony was the killer. They said he confessed. They said they had evidence. But what they really had was a desperate need to close the case. The truth about Anthony's so-called confession is chilling. He was brought into the station. He was questioned for hours. He was pressured. He was told what to say. And eventually, detectives produced a typed statement. They claimed Anthony signed it. They claimed it was his words. But Anthony Wright would later insist, over and over again, that he never confessed. That statement, he said, was not his. It was fabricated. Forced. But in 1993, when Anthony went to trial, the truth didn't matter. The trial moved quickly. The prosecution built its case on shaky ground. The so-called confession, circumstantial evidence, and testimony that would later collapse under scrutiny. Anthony's defense was weak, underfunded, unprepared. He was a young black man in a system stacked against him. And the result was almost inevitable. The jury deliberated. And soon they returned with a verdict, guilty. Anthony Wright was sentenced to life in prison, without parole. Prison swallowed him. The gates closed. The outside world disappeared. And a 20-year-old man began what would become 25 years of confinement. Think about what that means. 25 years of waking up every morning to the same cold walls. The same heavy bars. The same endless routine. 25 years of watching others go home, while you remain behind. 25 years of writing letters, proclaiming your innocence, and wondering if anyone will ever believe you. But Anthony never stopped fighting. He never stopped saying, "I didn't do this." Even when people stopped listening, even when hope seemed impossible, he held on. And then, slowly, science began to catch up with the truth. By the early 2000s, DNA testing had transformed the justice system. Evidence that once could only be guessed at could now be tested with precision. Anthony's case caught the attention of the Innocence Project, and they asked a simple question. What if the evidence from 1991 was tested today? The results were stunning. DNA from the crime scene was tested, and the profile that emerged was not Anthony Wright's. It matched another man entirely, a man named Ronnie Bird, a man with a history of violent crime. The truth that Anthony had been shouting for decades was finally visible in science. He had not raped Louise Talley. He had not murdered her. He was innocent. In 2014, Anthony's legal team pushed for a retrial. The state resisted. Prosecutors insisted they had convicted the right man. They argued the DNA didn't change anything. But eventually, a judge agreed. Anthony Wright would have his day in court again. And in 2016, 25 years after his wrongful conviction, Anthony sat once more in a courtroom. But this time, the evidence was on his side. The retrial was different. This time, the defense was strong. This time, Anthony had advocates. This time, the truth could not be silenced. Jurors heard about the DNA. They heard about the fabricated confession. They heard how detectives had pressured Anthony, and how evidence that should have cleared him decades ago was ignored. The case against him collapsed. And when the jury returned, their verdict was 2 words Anthony had waited a lifetime to hear. Not guilty. For the first time in a quarter century, Anthony Wright was free. He walked out of the prison gates. He felt the air on his face. The sky stretched wide above him. The weight of the bars, the chains, the cold walls, was gone. But freedom, as sweet as it was, carried its own heaviness. Because nothing could bring back what was stolen. Anthony had lost his 20s, his 30s, his 40s. He lost time with his mother, who passed while he was inside. He lost the chance to raise his son. He lost decades of life experiences most of us take for granted. He was free, but he would never be whole again. In 2018, Anthony sued the city of Philadelphia for wrongful conviction. The city settled. He received nearly $10 million. It was recognition of the injustice he suffered. But it was not justice. Because justice would have been never losing those years at all. And while Anthony had his name cleared, the detectives who built their case on lies finally faced charges of perjury. Accountability, rare as it was, arrived at last. Anthony Wright's story is not just about one man. It is about a system that can fail. A system that values quick convictions over truth. A system where a young black man can be railroaded by fabricated evidence and spend half his life in prison before anyone listens. His story forces us to ask, how many others are still waiting for justice? How many are still behind bars, innocent, unheard, forgotten? Anthony Wright is free today. But the scars remain. The missing years remain. The pain remains. His life is a warning. A reminder of what happens when the system chooses speed over accuracy. When it chooses appearance over truth. When it chooses power over justice. Anthony Wright lost 25 years. For a crime he did not commit. But he never lost his voice. He never lost his fight. And in the end, truth set him free. His story calls us all to remember. Justice is not conviction. Justice is truth. Justice is fairness. And without it, freedom means nothing. This is the story of Anthony Wright. A man whose life reminds us that justice delayed is justice denied. That innocence is not always enough. And that we must fight to make sure what happened to him never happens again.